Hello and welcome to this season review of the UAV8 SuperCar series live on Apex Racing TV. Very happy that you're joining us this evening over the next, I don't know, 60, 90 minutes, something like that. Myself, Sam Fitzpatrick, and also Marco Barbier, the regulars for the UAV8 SuperCar series, will be talking about what happens in this season 6 of the championship. The championship that was eventually won by Nicole Foggy, but did certainly have a lot of trials and tribulations along the way. Marco, we've now been commentating on this series for just over a year, and it's always difficult to rank the seasons, but I think last season was absolutely fantastic. Again, the championship was in the end quite comfortable, but that's now 5 different championship winners in 5 different seasons, and they're all terrific drivers. Can't wait for next season.
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. Hello, Sam. Yes, it has been certainly another exciting championship. Like you said, maybe the title, despite of course going to the final race, didn't go down to the wire. But once again, we have seen that the eventual champion for the second straight season has been the runner-up of the previous season. So certainly, the experience factor is once again proving to be very, very, very important in this particular style of racing. And we have had, Nicole Fogby that learned very, very quickly in just a couple of seasons. He became one of the best drivers last season after getting some experience under his belt in season 4 when Michael Evdoka won the title. And this season he made the leap, and was able to get the championship, beating his teammate and the defending champion, of course, Johnny Brandon. And despite some adversity that also, got to Johnny Brandon as well, because he also had to deal with some adversity himself, he was able to bring home the title and, swapping positions with his teammate because Brandon finishing in second. So certainly the XVR guys were on point for the entirety of the season, and I honestly cannot wait for the new season to start because we'll see if the tradition continues, which means that Johnny is going to win the title, or if some new face or some old face will be able to get back to the top step of the championship.
Yeah, and I think many of the drivers will fully admit to having extremely old faces of themselves. Of course, no offense to the league or anything, but I do feel slightly more of a child with all these bios coming in about drivers, which is a fantastic addition. That we'll certainly talk about in terms of the changes for next season, but just a few extra details on a few of the drivers. But yeah, usually, well, I say usually, we've done this with you one time before. It was for season 5, and we kind of just went race by race. I meant to make some notes going into this broadcast or whatever you call this, but I forgot. So I've just spent the last 5 minutes rapidly looking through the notes, and I got halfway through the season. But certainly do have some comments on the media day, Marco, because that's where it all started off. Of course, no championship points available, but I think we had 3 races that day. It was at Donington, I believe, the national track, and at least for myself, it was the emergence of a few new drivers, which really was the noticeable thing for me. I think was it Diego Catalan and also Howard Stadler and Philip Antonia as one, a couple of other new drivers. And it was plain to see, Marco, that whilst those drivers in the end, none of them won any races across the season, but it was fantastic to see some new drivers entering the series, which is always what we want. And they were very competitive, and looks as though they're going to be season regulars.
Yes, Edward Prager, another driver that comes to mind because he then had to, due to work commitments, sadly had to leave the series. But in the time he raced, and all these guys look to be somewhat of a similar pace. You could find them battling it out all race long in the races they took part in. And Donington certainly proved to be, the starting point of a very, very exciting season. And then it did disappoint because, one thing that we always say about this championship is that it really puts the drivers into a test of different skills, because you have super sprint races, which are very, very quick, normal feature races, which are a bit longer, and then you have the big enduros, of course, two of them per year. So you have to excel at all kinds of aspects of driving, and the media day gives you a rough idea. Welcome, I would say, to this kind of competition, because you have you have a super sprint, a sprint, and a feature. So apart from the enduro, which of course it's one of a kind racing, you can try, either for the first time, or coming back after a big bit of a layoff. You can really start to get into the mindset of having either to push like crazy for a super sprint race, or managing your tires for a feature, or also sometimes with the pit stops involved as well, start to think about um, if you prefer to make the tires last, or if you prefer to push a bit more than change tires. But of course then you have the penalty of spending a bit more time in the pits. So the media day is a great addition to the series, and Sebring will be fantastic next week, of course. But really, this one in Donington set up the table for what was going to be a fantastic season.
Yeah, definitely, and of course it's difficult to take anything away from the media day. But well, we kind of already assumed it was going to be close. We knew there was going to be mainly a fight between Foggy, Brandon, and Kloosterman, but particularly Catalan, who unfortunately didn't do many of the races after that. Hopefully, he'll be back for next season because he was a very quick driver. And yeah, certainly we knew that we had a tight championship on our hands. So, race one, Montreal, the race which was the media day for season 5, of course, where we saw a couple of crazy races. And Marco, it feels like a while ago. It was what, 3 months? Sorry, even more than that, about 5 months ago.
Yeah, it
And
was
I
January,
yeah, I
unbelievably.
totally yeah, I totally forgotten about this. But Nicole Foggy, I believe at least, blew his engine on the opening lap of the season and scored barely any points from the very first race of the season. He lost 75 points in the championship, one race into the season. And that just feels so long ago. And it was a bizarre incident, wasn't it? Because he did nothing unusual, no unusual downshifts, and the engine just popped coming through, go, going through one of the chicanes.
Yes, and sometimes, like I said, when we talk about the adversity, and the trouble the drivers have to deal with, this was straight away. Um, I think I don't remember, but I think you said that I predicted Nicole to win the title. So certainly
Yes,
at
we
the
got
beginning.
video evidence of it, by the way.
Okay.
So
Oh, this is good to hear. Certainly at the beginning of the season, uh, he was on. Certainly one of the drivers that apart from me, apart from myself, many thought he was going to be at the pointy end of the field come the end of the season. But certainly, and when you go into the series, into the season, you know about this. You read, you listen to the broadcast after the race. So I think I said that in the media day. So he knew that, and probably was cursing me before jinxing him. And then straight away, first race of the season, you have this bizarre problem, and of course at the same time um, you have your rivals Brandon and Klusterman having good races. But of course he made it. He made up for everything in the second race, because he was able to bring home the victory in the feature race and netting 300 points, which is of course a very very nice way to bounce back.
Yeah, absolutely. And we also saw the emergence of a new driver at the starts of the season, who was Jake Burton. Of course, he won two races, only unfortunately did the first couple of rounds. And actually, I say did the first couple of rounds. He did the first 1 1/3 rounds. I seem to remember in race two, which we'll get onto in a minute. He couldn't join the session. That was pretty much the end of his championship. But I believe a V8 Scops, the Australian series, which I believe is quite a serious deal now within iRacing with the with the link up with the real life V8 Supercar series. But so yeah, Burton won race one there. I think had an issue in race two, and a nice kind of pace setter, if you will, to a lot of the drivers, and kind of just proving that. Because I think Jake's one of the top drivers in that series, and drivers were sticking with him undoubtedly, which was very impressive. Just shows the quality of this series. Race two, of course, yeah, did go to Nick Foggy, but straight away in the championship, Brandon has a 50-point lead, 4 to 5 points, and it was an excellent start for him. Later, as yeah, so race two then was Tsukuba, which, well, after much practice, I was finally able to pronounce. And yeah, that race was ever so close, I seem to remember, Marco. I think Chris Jackson in particular was absolutely on fire that day and actually won race two, I want to say. I'm just checking my notes now. No, sorry, it was Burton, Evdoka, and Kloosterman who won races that day. And yeah, that was a fantastic round of the championship.
Yes, the first super sprint of the season, and if you remember, it was the first time in quite a while that I can remember that the drivers were very, you know, uh, there was a lot of aggression in the field. There was a lot of tension. The stakes were really really high. The drivers knew that the competition had stepped up a notch all around them. I remember really for the first time since I've been commentating on this particular series. That the organizers had to do a little bit of a warning post race because of the amount of crashes and a little bit of retaliatory driving that we have had. Uh, it was exciting, it was a new track for everyone. I think that was just it was released by iRacing a couple of weeks earlier in the December build, so there was not a lot of practice that these drivers could have done. Narrow track, tight track, and we have seen some crazy racing, uh, especially because it was very tough to pass around there. But with the V8s, you can get away with a little bit of hip and shoulder, and certainly the super sprint format also with the three short races with one random reverse and a full reverse certainly made for just like Okayama last season, the first super sprint, this one as well was one of the most controversial rounds that we have had all season long.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was quite a troublesome round. Yeah, there was a few incidents going into turn one, and around such a difficult and tight, twisty circuit as you were mentioning. Yeah, did cause a few issues for the drivers. Also, race three. Tony Kloosterman's VR headset. He lost sound and was absolutely cruising to the race victory, and then all of a sudden loses some sound. The drivers who were on his tail were Brandon and also Jackson, I believe, who were absolutely hounding him in the closing stages. Also, Foggy was pretty nearby as well, and he did a fantastic job. And actually, I think that was Tony's first win in a few months, and certainly for my pick of the season, who was Tony. Very good news that day, and meant that we had a few different winners in the opening couple of rounds. We had four different winners from the opening five races of the season. So it's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah,
Um,
I remember when Tony told that to us in the later in the day in the post race interview. I was absolutely amazed because sometimes that this is an issue that iRacing has that I don't think I remember any other simulator having. Must be something with the way the code is written. But basically, if you suffer a headset disconnection in iRacing and you plug the headset back into your USB port, you are not getting any audio again until you exit and go to the menu and say and pick the audio the right audio source again, which, as you know, while you are driving is not possible. So I have that happen sometimes, especially when my previous headset was having some cable issues, and I've been left with no audio for just the random Skip Barber or MX5 race, or even also on the ovals when you don't have to do a lot of gear shifting at all. But it was almost impossible to drive. You have to be super concentrated and also always keep an eye on the dash. Maybe change gears, in your mind, trying to reproduce the sound of the engine as you remember, for the countless laps of practice you did there. So, I mean, only a driver of Tony's quality and class could have done something like that because it is certainly one of the most difficult situations you can have when driving in iRacing.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, you did an awesome job to hang on to that race victory. And after that round, I'm just going to do some very bad maths quickly and just kind of half guess what the championship was like. Oh yeah, of course, at the end of that race, trouble for Branson in race two. And I remember I did a fantastic meme where I showed a picture of my favorite ties. It had three ordinary ties, and then it had the championship standings,
Mm.
which was one of the most comedic things I've ever come up with, and was delighted with that. I think it probably got about 2 Facebook likes, but there you go. What do you expect? I guess, but well, I found it funny at least. Certainly meme of the season. I think not too much competition.
Let's say
What
our
else
meme
we
game
added?
was a bit better early in the season
Oh,
than.
it was superb. Absolutely fantastic. And of course, anyone who doesn't really know what we're talking about, go back on our Facebook page, Apex Racing TV, and scroll back to January, February, March, something like that. Before I had exams, and I had something to fill my days with. I was absolutely superb on the memes.
My favorite one is and will always be the one of the World GT when your driver, poor Ben Gregory, was sent into outer space while you were
The deja
commentating. By
vu
the way,
thing, yeah.
that was absolutely crazy.
Oh yeah, and the X Files music as well, where you got the
Oh yeah,
invisible
the, the,
car.
the disappearing car on the
Yeah.
backstretch. That round of the World GT was really like a meme gold
Oh,
mine,
it was
basically.
so was. Absolutely. And Chaz Jacob, of course, our co-commentator on Apex Racing TV. Also, Chaslington, of course, on Facebook. Certainly do check him out. But yeah, made some fantastic memes as well of that round. So, but we're not talking about the World GT. If the UV8s can live up to that standard of memes next season, then we are in for a treat, undoubtedly. So after the first 2 rounds, yeah, it was even between the top two. I think Kloosman was there. That's and actually, just a quick word on Michael Evdoka, Marco, because it was so good to see Michael back after missing pretty much all of season 5. It was awesome to see him back for round 2 of season 6 because he's such a fast driver. And of course, I've chatted to Michael Kleiber. He's a good friend of mine. And yeah, it was fantastic to see him back in the championship, and of course, straight away getting back into winning ways.
I mean, the class that Michael has isn't, second almost to none. And despite a bit of a layoff, not driving the cars, he came back and really, when he was on the track, he was one of the, if not the, one, always contending for race wins. And it was certainly a pleasure to have him back. Of course, I'm a bit nostalgic of when he won the title because it was my first season commentating. this championship, and every time he comes back, he's always a welcome addition to the starting grid in Euro V8s, and certainly to have him present to a good number of rounds was very very good for the championship. Not only for the quick drivers, but also for these new drivers that debuted this season to have the chance to basically have the chance to fight against, let's say, four champions, because uh, Nicole won the title in the end, and of course there were Johnny, Michael, and Tony already champions of their own. So certainly it was a stacked grid by the number of quality drivers and former champions and future champions also. So it certainly has been a fantastic learning experience for the new drivers, and hopefully Michael comes back again for a few rounds next season. And also it was nice to have in some of the rounds also another very veteran of the series like Victor Tanaka, always putting on a good show. And if you want to learn how to battle in the Euro V8s, you want to race against Victor Tanaka. It was
Yeah,
a great to have him back. And
yeah,
also he
absolutely.
said that he likes to show up to put on a good show for us, for Apex Racing TV in the final race of the season. So big thumbs up. That's a great motivation to race, I
Yeah.
think.
So next up in the championship was unfortunately one that I missed. What was I? What was I doing
Okay,
that
I
day?
I,
Come
I
on.
remember the
Oh,
day.
I remember. Yes, I was watching the Fed Cup, which
Hmm.
anyone who doesn't know, it's basically the World Cup of women's tennis, and I was down in a Bath. Was it Bath University? May have been Bath University. I'm not sure, but basically in a sports hall, and that was where they were hosting it. Only a couple of thousand people could see it, and well, that was a good day. But unfortunately, I did miss that round, and it was yourself and
Well, it was myself and Tyler with
of
Samuli
course,
behind
yeah.
the cameras because Samuli wasn't feeling too great, and everyone thought that everyone else got the broadcast covered, but in the end it wasn't, because if you remember, that was the day I got my marshalling license for the motorcycle.
Yes,
So
of course.
I came home completely destroyed, and Samuri said, "You better jump in for the broadcast." So, and Tyler was kind enough to join us, last second as well, and we were treated to a fantastic, fantastic race. Because it was a fight until the very final corner between Foggy and Brandon, which in the end was won by the then future champion Nicole Foggy. But in the last three laps, I think they overtook each other several times. Le Mans was a fantastic round. 8 times the for the first time we had the 8 times clock acceleration. So the race started at sunset and basically ended close to sunrise, but was mostly spent in the night. And it was a pleasure to see these cars not only run, through the night, also, the iconic corners of Le Mans at night, Euro V8s, and the two championship contenders that the standings were starting to become more clear, basically. And these two guys fought until the bitter end, and it seemed like Johnny was going to win the race. Then all of a sudden he made a mistake, and Nicole overtook him, and just on the final lap seemed like no one wanted to win the race, because every time one of them got into the lead, then he made a mistake a few corners later, and then he was overtaken again. In the end, Nicole was able to bring home 450 very very important points, and think that maybe those points were very important, because then when we know what happened, of course, next round, getting into the rest of the season knowing that you have 450 points in the bag for one race work, it's not bad, especially because what we said. He didn't. He basically had very few dropped points because of what happened, of course, in the next round as well, where he wasn't very, very lucky. It was Nicole Foggy. But, getting those points in the bag gave him a little bit of a cushion, which was really, really good. And also, Enduros in this championship never fail to entertain.
Yes, absolutely. And also, quick word, like those two were absolutely dominant. They won the race by over a minute, I think. Absolutely dominate. But actually, first podium. of his UAV8 career went to Hal Stadler that day, which you can see that it was his third meeting, his first ever enduro. Not a bad effort. Lane O'Connor was in fourth place. What happened to the Never Quit Racing drivers that day, Marco? I saw them drop down early on, but what happened to Cleesman and Jackson? Because they really had a bit of a meh.
To be honest, I don't remember very well. Maybe they were involved in some kind of collision. Think that especially in the chicanes there was a bit of trouble. Maybe in the very first corner. I don't know right now. Maybe we'd have to ask Tony. Last time he joined in the chat during the review. Maybe he will again, and we'll ask him because right now I don't recall that particular race like in its entirety. I was pretty smashed.
Yeah.
I just spent what was that like from 8 a.m. to like 12:30 p.m. doing the you know lesson. It was one big lesson in a very tiny room and full of people and and trying to get all the notions in your head. And then I spent most of the afternoon picking up broken bikes in the gravel traps, doing the practical test, So, and I came home. I said, okay, I'm going to jump on the bed and catch you tomorrow. And then by chance, I picked up the phone and I found a message from Samuli. I said, okay, the bed will have to wait just a bit, I said to myself. And it was worth it because it was a fantastic round.
Just a quick word on your marshal, because we now know that iRacing actually modelled their marshals on yourself, Marco, with your frantic flag waving. But on that course, did everyone else know what they're doing, or did you feel you had a bit of a head start with that because of the amount of motorsport you've seen and commentated on and half taken part on iRacing?
I have to say that I, both in the motorcycling and in the, auto racing, courses that I did this season, I was very surprised by the amount of, people that were there, not really knowing a lot about motor racing, which is completely fine because it's great also. But I always thought that the track marshal is something that you do in my ignorance, that's something that you do, just like, being a referee in football. You don't do that randomly. You do that because you really love football. Because who would be crazy enough to be a referee? About all the and the same. But I was very surprised by the amount of people who I dare I say didn't even know what a yellow flag was, and it was. Hopefully, that is why, of course, after you do after you do the courses, and the car one is a bit longer. It was 4 days with an exam in the end. Then you have to do a certain amount of days as an observer in the marshalling post, because especially if you start from scratch, like many of my colleagues did, it's not enough, of course, to read. Then when it comes the time to give a flag, you have to be sure of what you are doing. So I was listening to the 24-hour Le Mans broadcast on Eurosport, of course, last week, the real one, and they were saying that one question that always comes up is the blue flags at Le Mans. No, how do they know when to give the blue flags? And this was asked to the commentators of the Italian Eurosport, and the answer was, the race direction tells you when to give the blue flag. And I have to say, sadly, that is not true. Every like half an hour or so, they give you the first 5 runners, and basically then you have to give you the blue flags. You give them yourself. You have to be, and already in my career, I have given blue flags to the wrong drivers many times, especially with the bikes. In the bike enduros I did, the cars you can, more or less have an idea, the cars are different, and the liveries, but bikes are very tough to pick apart from each other, especially from a distance. So Yeah, I've given blue flags to leaders a couple of times in my career. But yeah, giving blue flags is by far one of the toughest things you can do, especially in these longer races.
Yeah,
I,
definitely.
I, I wish we had the race direction pushing the button and your arm moves automatically with the blue flag.
I remember the 2013 Australian Grand Prix when Sutzel was leading the race and he was getting blue flags for the entire event despite being there fair and square. Sorry for going a bit off topic, but well there you go. Imola was next up. This was round or meeting four of the season. And Marco, you've already mentioned a little bit about it. Nicole Foggy, his first real setback, just looking at the points, he lost 315 points. Obviously, it turned out to be his drop round, but it's still not a good race whatsoever for Nicole Foggy whatsoever. Whilst it was a very good race for Johnny Brandon, I think he won both races that day, which would mean that was his only double race win of the season. So at this, it's so easy to forget. And we don't usually have this because I remember in season 5, Brandon kind of got the upper hand early on, and then they were evenly matched in the second half of the season. But at the start of this season, once again, it was Brandon getting the upper hand. It was almost deja vu, almost compared to season 5, and it could have so easily ended up the same way. Just shows how kind of how much fortune plays in the championship that Foggy ended up getting it pretty comfortably. But that was an awesome round from Brandon. I don't remember too much from it, I will admit. But yeah, it must have been difficult for Nicole at that time because once you have a round like that, you cannot you've got to turn up for every other round of the championship, otherwise you're absolutely screwed.
Exactly, and of course, with the rule book saying that you cannot drop the final round of the season, you basically know that you're already one strike. You have one strike on your count. So big zero, and at the same time, like you say, his teammate getting the big 300 points. So that was not ideal for him. Brandon drove fantastically, whilst many drivers were caught out by the track. I remember several spins coming out of Acqua Minerali, several drivers getting caught out by there, and that first chicane proved to be a nice passing spot, even though Imola, especially in the new configuration, doesn't have a lot of passing opportunities. But the drivers, with once again with a little bit of argy-bargy, were able to make their way through the field. But Brandon was the clear winner, clear dominator of round 7 and 8, and certainly looked to be in a good position. But then, of course, everything was like I would like to say restored, but no, it wasn't restored because if Nicole was unlucky in race 2 in Imola, Johnny was unlucky in both of the races at the Nürburgring.
Yes, absolutely. That's what we'll go on to next because this was for me at least, the meeting of the season, particularly race 2 at Nürburgring, was absolutely fantastic in my opinion. Yeah, unfortunately, Johnny Brandon couldn't take part in it. Maybe it would have been even better if he was around. But this was the first big issue for Johnny. And remember, was such a consistent driver in the second half of season 5 and really hadn't had any issues. But then I believe it was a brake issue, a brake pedal issue
Yes.
and it didn't work. And well, it's quite important, the brake pedal in this V8 supercar, because it does go awfully quick and it's not particularly good around the corner. So unfortunately, Johnny had to retire from both races and was a no score. So that round, lost 430 points. So him and Foggy were pretty much even. After this, with Foggy a bit of a lead overall, but of course both with big drop rounds for one another. But the main thing about that race, after Nicole Foggy won race 1, was the battle between McClay and Klosterman, I thought, Marky, because from what I can remember at least, Klosterman was leading early on. McClay managed to get ahead of Klosterman on the circuit, and then during the pit stops, had a slowish pit stop, Klosterman got back ahead, and then for the next 12 laps or so was such intense driving where Klusman was being hounded constantly by McClay and Foggy, who was on slightly older tires.
It was a
And the
fantastic round.
Canadian managed
Yeah.
to hang on to it. Yeah.
Yeah, like you said, round of the season probably, and race 2 especially one of my favorite races all season long. Once again, Tony showing his class, defending, and McClay putting on a valiant fight, coming up just short, but what can we say? Also around once again where a little bit of uh, you know aggressiveness, I have to say, was really prominent. We had some big crashes. Remember, maybe Michael F. Doka was involved in one of those.
Yes.
We had some, big contacts, big, wheel-to-wheel door banging action. I think it was because Dalle Donne was racing. He was the, extra ingredient, and before, leaving for his vacation, his work abroad. So he ended up with a bang. Uh, all jokes aside, it was a fantastic round, and with Nicole Foggy, I think getting also the I don't know if the idea, or it's always tough when your teammate runs into trouble and you are fighting against him for the championship, especially two close teammates like Nicole and Johnny. But after what happened to him at Imola, maybe he felt like not all was lost. Au contraire, he got an even bigger helping hand from Lady Luck, because he was able to score big in both races, whilst his championship rival scored a big zero.
Yeah, so that was that was nerve-wracking, and like I said, we did get a little bit argy-bargy at times. Yeah, for us race of the season, but if you have a race of the season, there's a post within the V8 within the year V8's Discord. You'll have to scroll up to a few days ago. Okay. And well, I want to make a highlights video for the best race of the season. Unfortunately, about 4 races are currently tied on about 5 votes each, and so we kind of need a couple more people just to break that deadlock. Otherwise, me and Michael will have to break it. But it would be quite nice to have a drivers voted one, certainly, because well, those are the guys that certainly counts, and well, are the reason why the races are so good, undoubtedly. Next round, and for me, this round was probably the turning point in the season. The last 2 rounds, you cancel each other out. Foggy and Brandon are ever so committed to this championship. I don't think they're ever going to miss a round of the championship. And so, you can kind of get away with one awful round each. And so they kind of went into Zolder in Belgium on a relatively even footing. And this, Marco, was another awesome race too, where we had the likes of Foggy, I think Klusman was in there, Brandon, Docker as well, all fighting for the win. Race 1 went to Brandon with race 1 went to Foggy with Brandon in second, and according to this, Richard Warminger in third. Which, sorry, Richard, I don't really remember too well, but according to the points at least, he finished in third position. And then in the feature race, was ever so close. We had during the pit stops, Johnny Brandon got a stop go penalty, and Michael Avdoga had the chance to win, made a mistake though, and once again it all fell into the lap of the eventual race winner, which was Nick Foggy once again. And after that, he did have a bit of a lead in the championship, something like a 70-point lead, I think, when you take into consideration the drop round.
Yeah, first of all, the Richard Wormingham, absolutely. Just talk a second about him, because certainly, quietly, I have to say, he was one of the most improved drivers of the season.
Mm.
And I think graduating from the club championship to the overall championship, and having it's always nice to have two great teammates. But I think he showed that he can be a driver that can always fight for a top five. I think with a bit of luck, he might also win a race next season. So let's keep an eye on him, because he is on a trajectory of constant improvement. So certainly one to watch for season 7. Yeah, you were right about the penalty, and if I'm not mistaken, the penalty was for the pit exit, and he
Yes.
just like uh, slightly clipped. He was pushing super hard to stay in front of his teammate and in front of Evdoka when Johnny was coming out of the pit. So he clipped that. It's a weird pit end exit there at Zolder because it's also in a corner, so car tends to drift wide and you have to stay all on the right side. I mean, it's not as bad as the Paul Ricard pit exit, which they managed to make it even worse this season than it was last season, in my opinion. It's not like they are missing real estate to maybe make the pit exit.
You're absolutely
After
right.
the first corner, like they do in Canada.
Well, they
Okay.
got like 5 tracks in order to. They could just attach it to one of the configurations, couldn't they? And that would work. So
Yeah.
now you're right back onto the racing line, a bit like how Monaco used to be.
Even though they made a nice work with the pit entrance this season, I have to
Yes,
give
that
them
looks very
that.
good.
But back to this race, another fantastic round. It was a bit penalized, I think, the spectacle by the fact that I mean, it was a very entertaining race. Don't get me wrong, but in Zolder so difficult to pass, and so the drivers had to rely on mistakes from their opponents. That is exactly what happened to Michael Evdoka, and so a clean sweep of the Zolder round for Nicole Foggy, scoring 450 points, so getting 45 points more than his teammate. And you are right in saying that this was the turning point of the season because after this one, if I'm not mistaken, uh, Nicole never looked back again in the standings.
I do have to correct ourselves. Richard
Mhm.
Warren didn't get a penalty. Sorry, didn't get a podium at race 1 at Zolder. He actually finished in 5th place, but got some bonus points for not picking up any 0x's. It was, in fact, Victor Tanaka who got his first podium of the season, I believe. He never quit racing USA. George McClay was 4th, and Richard Warringham was in 5th. Philip Anzoni, by the way, also got 6th place, which I think was one of his best results of the season. So worth just mentioning him. And it was a bit of a weird race. Actually, Jackson got involved in something clearly. Also, Docker and Plusterman did. And yeah, so that was the situation was from Zolder. Another awesome round, and at this point in the season, you're thinking this is turning into a good championship. And Sonoma once again delivered a circuit that Marco you're not particularly fond of, although you like the cup layout, don't you? So
Yes, yes, no,
that's fair enough.
no,
Yeah.
I'm having a bit of a moment of not craziness. I am a little bit off, put a little bit off by the other image on the V8 Supercar V8 ESC website because the liveries are from the final round of the season because you can see Harald Stadler with the Niki Lauda tribute livery, but the picture is from I
Yeah.
think the media day, and the car banners have the new sponsor on them, Racetech. So I felt a bit, what's going on here? But yeah, certainly we have to talk about the new sponsor later. But yeah, and that livery by Harald Stadler,
Oh,
certainly the livery of the
lovely.
season.
Yeah.
Uh, so beautiful that in fact, once again, I cannot stress it this enough. Forced Sam to convince Sam to install the paint pack for the final round of the season, and it was certainly worth it. Back to Sonoma. Sonoma, the drivers, if you remember, were struggling a lot. The track temperature was unbearably hot, despite being a super sprint event. It was, you know, uh, tire management was super difficult, and it's not a surprise that we have had the race winners that we have had. So Johnny Brandon winning race 1, Nicole Foggy winning race 2, and if I am not mistaken, the winner of race 3 was Michael Evdoka, yes. So, and of course, if you remember, there was a little bit of shenanigans at the end of race 2 to get that
Yes.
all important pole position, and because of that, and I'm sorry, I am very upset at Michael, and that I think it was Sambuzi, the other driver, that we have a reverse grid wheel for season 7 that Albert Einstein we will need his help to figure out what's going on.
Well, they
So
always say, don't they, don't reinvent the wheel. But,
yeah.
well, that is well and truly what Clyde Whiting has done um, out there. Um, Sam Kuma actually explained it to me the other day, but it's a combination of two things. So you have the inner wheel, which will come up with a value, say 6, for example, and then you have the outer wheel, which will say 4, and I believe that would be a reverse grid of 10. Or you could maybe have 6 and 1, so it was 6 and plus 1, which would be 7. I think that's how it works at least. You can also have minuses.
We have
So
exactly 1 week to make it work, to find that.
yes,
Well,
uh,
on the upper end, the plus side means that I have to download the wheel maybe next week, and I can spin it a lot of times to understand how it works. Every time I spin the wheel, that makes me very very happy. So, but yeah, that was one of the rule changes for next season: the new reverse wheel, which will make its debut in Media Day next Saturday at Sebring. So you don't want to miss that.
no, that'll be 3 races. So 2 spinnings of the wheels, and considering that there's 2 wheels, that's like 4 spins in a way, which is madness, absolutely madness. So yeah, Brandon won a race, Gogi won a race, and Evdoka won a race. In terms of the points, on that one, Foggy just extended his lead at this point in the championship, including the drop score. I think he's about 100 points ahead, nearly 100 points ahead. So he's got a good lead, but by no means is the championship over with so many rounds to go, 4 rounds to go, of course, after Sonoma. So certainly up for grabs, and also Klusman's, at this point keeping his nose in there, perhaps, but gradually losing points to the two XVR drivers. So after that was an odd race.
Hmm.
It was Bathurst, where a mistake. Some mistakes are bad, some mistakes are good, and this was a good mistake because the Bathurst races were strangely long. We had probably usually the sprint races, by the way, are about 30 minutes long. This time the sprint race was 45 minutes long. The feature race is usually 50 minutes long. This time it was about an hour and a quarter long. And so actually Lee Thompson, which is one of the admins on for Apex Racing TV, he did ask us, you've left the stream going 45 minutes too long. And he exclaimed and we replied with, well, the race is still going on. And that was the mistake that the organizers had made. They'd put the wrong amount of laps, I believe, on the website or on one of the thumbnails or something like that. And yeah, we had to. It was still fantastic though. Watch those 2 races, and the story of race 1, sprint race, for the first ever time, everyone pitted. Everyone, apart from Nicole Foggy, and I dare say one other Joe, but I'm not sure who it was. But Nicole Foggy won that race quite comfortably in the end by not pitting. It was Klosterman second. Brandon had a bit of an off. And yeah, so just more fantastic racing from Foggy, and just showing his brains there to smartly stay out, saved a lot of fuel, was not very fast, but had track position, so he could lift and coast all he liked, and he was still in the lead and won the race by 20 odd seconds in the end.
Great driving there in the first race. I remember talking to Tony in the pre-race. He gives us the all the information for the broadcast and the predicted strategies, and he was sure that we were going to have pit stops in the first race. But Nicole Foggy had a fantastic idea to stay out, and of course, in Bathurst, if you find traffic, it is very very tough to get through, especially if you get traffic in the mountain section, because then if you find traffic in the first corner or coming out, into Conrod Strait, you can make the move quite easily. But if you find someone in front of you, or a couple of cars battling it out in front of you on the mountain section, you have to wait basically half a lap to get past them. So it certainly was a great call. It was, I think, the longest sprint and feature races in the history of the championship. That is why many drivers went to the pits. And then, if that seemed long, race 2 was it was like the great Bob Ross said, we don't make mistake, we make happy accidents. And this second race of the day, with basically a mini enduro finishing under I wouldn't say under the lights because Bathurst doesn't have track lights, but finishing at night basically with the headlights on. It was fantastic, I have to say. And once again, Nicole Foggy prevailed, and Johnny Brandon did not score, so he suffered a big zero in this race here. But and I remember coming end of the race, talked to Clyde Whiting. I said, "This was a fantastic idea to end the race under the lights," and said, "Yeah, it was a mistake." So ruining the magic of the moment, and also this will be one of the changes for next season that we will talk about later.
Yeah, I'm quickly just looking back. It was pitch black for the last couple of laps, and of course, up until the most recent iRacing update, the headlights aren't too effective on iRacing, and so it was very good that they did change those things. I didn't. I'd forgotten, and I feel absolutely terrible for this. But Alex Mass finished in second place in that race. And sorry to Alex, but I've totally forgotten. Why did I forget that? Because that's one of the drives of the season. We didn't see a whole lot of kind of underdogs really getting that many podiums across the championship. And yeah, Alex Mass quietly went about his business and finished second in that race. Did you remember that, Marco?
Yes, yeah. Now that I think about it, yes, I remember. Of course, he was there profiting from mistake of some of the quicker drivers. It was a fantastic, Bathurst is a track where some drivers really really excel. So it was certainly one of the drivers. And Alex, I would love him to be bit more present, because I think he certainly has the stuff to be a future champion in this series, but he needs to be more present on the grid.
Yeah, there's of course everyone in the championship is ever so competitive, but if we could have Alex Mass back, you think Mass, Stadler, Antonia, Warmingham, plenty of other drivers, Croft, um, yeah, lots of drivers, and they are so evenly matched in this series that you have no idea who's going to kind of finish best of the rest each round. It's almost like the Formula 1.5 championship, where those guys aren't going to consistently be winning rounds. They could win the occasional sprint round, perhaps, but it's ever so competitive in that midfield, and they always provide fantastic racing. If those guys can really commit to the entire season, we could have a fantastic championship. Next time, next race of the championship was Charlotte, which coming out of Bathurst then. So after the non-score for Brandon, all of a sudden it was looking very good for Nicole Foggy. Of course, Brandon had already got 0 points in one of the rounds, and so 130 points, which you think the drivers average, or at least Brandon averages, probably about 350 points per round, 350 to 400 points per round. To have a 130 point round count, that's 250 points gone, which is a massive swing in the championship. And so Foggy all of a sudden had a big lead, and it was all his to lose going into the next few rounds. And if the pressure was going to him, you wouldn't know, because at Charlotte, the second injury of the season, he absolutely dominated his way to the race win. I say dominated, to be fair. George McClay, it must be said, and we haven't talked too much about George McClay, but what a fantastic addition to the series he was, Michael, I believe, with a little bit of experience as well. And he was pushing Foggy all the way for that first stint. And in the end, it was just Foggy's kind of consistency which really won him that race. But in the early stages, it was McClay who was the fastest driver out on circuit, but Foggy just managed to, as he does, position his car perfectly on track and use the strategy really to his advantage to eventually take a relatively comfortable win.
Yes, and it was a race of the big factor of the race was the backstretch chicane, where many drivers had issues blowing their engines. You took that curb on the outside the wrong way, and your car was destroyed. So, we saw some drivers use their fast repair smartly. For example, Clyde Whiting, who was able to, crash, blow his engine, get the fast repair, and still, I think, win in his in his category. But at the same time, many drivers were caught out, and the first time you can get away with it, the second time you can't, and it was. Like you said, McLeay had a fantastic drive. It was for the first stint a three-way fight for the win. The three leaders were super close. Then after the pit stops, like you were saying, um, it was better pace from Foggy that eventually won him the race, and it was another great round. You know, I really like this 8-time acceleration for the enduros. It really gives you the enduro feel, despite not being a very very long race. It's still a long race, of course, but it's not like massively long. And so, big thumbs up. Charlotte certainly provided to be a nice setting for an enduro, and Nicole Foggy basically couldn't miss a bit now in the championship because he was really, really, putting on good performance after good performance. Like you were saying, he didn't feel the pressure and he could look at the final 2 rounds of the season basically with half of the title in the bag.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, he was well on course by this point. He could afford quite a hefty accident. But just looking at the results, I didn't realise that it was a Scottish 1-2. It was actually a British 1-2-3 as well, which I do think happened a couple of times across the season. Foggy, McLeay, Brandon with Stadler, and Klusman running out top five. Also, I'm trying to include a few of the midfield drivers here who I think really made improvements. And Nikolai Bogotayev, Marco, a driver who really did come into his own near the end of the championship. A driver who's been around at least since I started broadcasting the series in season 4. I believe he may have even been around since season 2, or maybe even season 1. Not quite sure, but a veteran of the series. And I must say, Bogotayev went from the occasional top 10 to consistently, battling for best of the rest. And so I don't know where that sudden pace came from Nikolai. I think he's still a privateer, kind of working by himself, I think, mainly. But just found a sudden burst of pace, and congratulations to him because he was superb in those closing few rounds. One of the most improved drivers of the season.
Absolutely agree with you. He was always there, and you are right in his unmistakable white and red Ford livery. Uh, really, yes. I remember him. Basically, I don't think he ever skipped a round or something like that since I started commentating. And for some drivers, it takes a bit longer to get into the groove of things with this car. It also depends on how much time you can and you want to invest in your training and your practicing. I could try. I could drive like 6 seasons and still be last in this championship. I know. Uh, but Nikolai and he is also already signed up for the new season. So, and I think he will race always with the same livery. So good consistency. I'm seeing some very very nice livery. The XVR livery is absolutely amazing this season. You will see it on Saturday in the media day. But if you go onto the Euro V8 Facebook page, there is like Sam was saying earlier, there are all these nice previews of the drivers, and you can see the new liveries. Absolutely, big thumbs up. The XVR, they are all beautiful. The XVR one is, especially beautiful. So Ulton Park, sprint and feature event, and it was, not the best of rounds for Nicole Foggy, but at this point of the championship, he knew he just had to bring the car home and not score at zero, and that is exactly what he did because he was very very consistent, got a couple of good results, if not great, only good results, but he knew and we knew that that was almost all he needed to do in order to bring home the championship.
Yeah, he crashed in race 2. One of the most shocking things that I've ever seen on a on a broadcast because he was driving so well going into this round. Really, the peak of his powers was Nick Foggy. He'd won 1, 2, 3. He won 3 races in a row, and from Bathurst all the way into Charlotte, and also won a race at Sonoma, won 2 races at Zolder. So you think I'm not going to work it out now, but he'd won probably 5 of the past 8 races or so in the championship, and then a crash in race 2 when running in about 3rd position. I believe it was Tony Kliesman returning to the top step of the podium. He was very competitive at Alton Park. A lot of talk going into this round about how some of the drivers, I think particularly Foggy and Brandon, I don't think had ever driven around the circuit in any car, whereas Kliesman, with his experience in the V8 Supercar, had some experience around that circuit, and it sure did help him. Of course, Alton Park, one of the rounds next season as well. I believe it's a super sprint round. So certainly Klusman will be very pleased about that one. Maybe had a little bit to do with the calendar. Maybe whispered into Mr. Clyde Whiting's ear a little bit about that particular circuit, but he certainly did deliver. And yeah, at that point, championship certainly looked to be going his way. I'm just trying to get the results up to see if there was any kind of notable results for any of the drivers. Fortunately, I can't actually find the results, but there you go. Pretty much went through the first few results. Also, one the stream that I'm just streaming went very weird there actually for the Alton Park round. So I don't know if there was some kind of issue there. But anyway, going into the next round of the season, then the final round of the season, Snetterton, of course, the track that I only live about 20 miles away from.
Sorry if I'm laughing, but I just thought about last season's review, where all of a sudden weird subtitles appeared
Oh, that was glorious.
during
With
the
with
Branzet's video,
with Branson winning
and
winning the
Sam
race.
Coomer. Oh man, that was classic. It's because when you get the video from YouTube, YouTube is kind enough to give you also the subtitle track. But since the subtitles are automatically generated, and it's an Italian guy speaking in another language, the poor Google subtitle generator went a bit crazy. You can still find the video if you go back to our previous review, and you can see the first few minutes that uh, I have no words to describe what happened there. Let's go back to your home race. That was the final one of the
Yes,
season.
yes, and it was Snetterton. So at this point, how many points was he ahead? Okay, this is easy maths because Brandon scored 5 more points. So there were 315 points between Foggy and Brandon. Kliesman had actually moved up into second in the championship with a few wins. And yeah, so Kliesman was ahead of Brandon, but Foggy miles out ahead. So it was kind of just his crowning, his inauguration, if you will. But it was Brandon getting off to the good start, winning a race, had a very good race 2 as well. I think he may have won race 2. Did Johnny Brandon? He did, and we were thinking, oh, can he get the triple? It didn't turn out to be that way, and in the end, finally, it was George McClay who won his first race of the season at the very last attempt after coming so close so many times. He finally got that race win, and well, overall, it was a really good race at Snetterton, wasn't it?
It was absolutely the way you can imagine super sprints going, and also it was on the 200 layout, which meant that I think it's the better configuration of the racetrack. We have
Yeah.
had a couple of issues, especially Tony Klusterman was involved in a couple of pileups in two separate races at the hairpin. So, especially in the very first lap, that first section of corners, really, really caught out some of the drivers. McClay got his victory. Brandon got a couple, of victories as well. And the happiest of them all, I think, was Nicole Foggy finally getting the hands on the championship. He was, a very, very well-deserved winner, and of course we must not forget that at the same time we had Gary Croft bring home the club championship. So maybe he will get a black stripe for next season. I think that's the way it works. Yeah, the colors are changing for next season, so I have to update the overlay. So we're going to have black and white instead of red and yellow that we have had for when I first started, we had three colors, I think. Uh, Green, blue, and red, or maybe only green and blue. It was a long time ago.
I think
Apologies.
there may have been rookies back then, wasn't there?
Yeah, yeah, there were
Rookie
rookies as well.
championship, yeah. So I must say, I think maybe D class would be a good idea in this championship. But next season, well, of course, anyone who beats Clyde Whiting automatically gets promoted to the Pure class because Clyde has to win the club championship. I'm not sure. I am just going to see. So past winners, has Clyde ever won the he won the safe driver in season 1. Stephen Lattimore, Johnny Brandon, Richard White. No, he's never won the club championship as Clyde Whiting, so he needs to kick out anyone who has the possibility of beating him. And finally, in season 7, his seventh attempt, he might be able to win it. Came second actually, and actually pushed Croft pretty far in the championship, it must be said. Was only 100 points between the two of them in the end. And just a shout out to Clyde, because we have to say this, otherwise we won't be broadcasting next season. But he improved quite a bit in the second half of the season and was really delivering well, showing his experience more than anything else, I think, Marco. And towards the end of the season, particularly that's Net's turnaround, and also Charlotte as well, getting a few top 10s.
Well, yeah, I think that I have my place in broadcasting this series is, it's a shoot because, I've been personally requested by Clyde's wife, to be in the booth.
Of course,
So
yes.
I'm in the safe, so you have to say that he improved a lot. But it was true. It was. I'm waiting for him to win a chance. It's like the story of the guy that invented fantasy baseball that never won fantasy baseball championship in his life.
Oh,
So yeah, it's always tough, because you have to concentrate on the driving and the stewarding, and that was a water bottle falling down. Um, so it's tough, but he's there or thereabouts. I have to say that Nicole Foggy in the end, uh, won three titles. Of course, the big one, and also the Safe Driver Award, and the Fred Bingham Forever Forward Award, which is basically the driver that gains the most places in each race, combined in some adding up all the places gained in each of the races, and of course. Nicole was one of the favorites to begin with because with the reverse grids, you usually, even though we didn't have, that was one of
oh,
the,
don't
that
get me
was,
started on
yeah,
that.
yeah, that was one of the big talking points of the season, the small reverse grids. So, it was not easy for Nicole and the lot to get, big positions gained in this particular championship because they, with 6, 7, 8 reverses usually, it was not easy, to gain spots, but he made it through. So, and of course, XVR got the team championship, and like we said, the club went to Gary Croft. So basically, Nicole Foggy taking and XVR taking home 4 of the 5 awards, and Gary Croft ending up with the club championship. So, and I'm seeing that last season, Richard Wormingham was the winner in the club championship, got promoted to to the pro class. So I'm expecting that Gary will be bumped up in his license as well.
Yes, definitely. And yes, and he deserves it. And to be fair, Gary has certainly established himself as one of the best of the best. Keep on going on about this best of the best thing, but it is so close with the amount of competitive drivers you've got consistently finishing in kind of 6th to 12th places. They're all so evenly matched. And hopefully next season we'll see that battle rejuvenated, and hopefully all those drivers will come back. If anything, if the meet the drivers thingamajig has got anything to do with it, I'm pretty sure we are going to see the vast majority of drivers back, and maybe also a few new ones, which would be absolutely fantastic to see. So I think looking back at last season is pretty much done. Of course, Nicole Foggy and Gary Kropp the championship winners. I think now gotta look forward to next season, Marco, and I, I'll give you a moment to load up the schedule for next season.
I have it ready. I
Oh,
am.
you're too good. You're a professional. Okay. Um,
Hopefully I am. And I like the way I think they did the same in the past few seasons, if not, but I really like the airport style schedule. Like
yes.
airport, which is inspired by the real life Euro V8 since they are sponsored by Virgin Australia, the airline company. Every time when they have the schedule, each round they take away one of the flights from the flight board, before the broadcast in the real Euro V8. So nice inspiration there. And yes, so we are about to get going. And as per usual, like you said, Media Day is just around the corner. Like I said many times, it's the 29th of June. Like I said last week or 2 weeks ago, I don't remember. It is going to be a very nice day for me. Not only Euro V8s are back, but it's also the city holiday of Rome. So it's a big day for us. And what better way to spend it than with the media day of the Euro V8s? 3 races from Sebring. Then usually we had straight away the first round of the season. Not this time around because the sprint series that we run basically as training for the main series. So we'll have to wait a couple of weeks. In the 13th of July, we will be at Interlagos for a classic sprint plus feature 2 race events. Then the first triple header at Hulton Park in the Foster's layout, a layout that I particularly hate. It reminds me of the early days of my Skip Barber career. I lost, I lost a couple of licenses in 1 week at Hulton Park Foster's. Then we will be in Daytona on the 10th of August, and that will be an enduro event. Of course, I'm quite sure that will be also, take part at night or somewhere, big enduro field. Then on the 24th of August, we're going to have Phillip Island and VIR on the 7th of September. Both of these will be sprint and feature combined. Then a super sprint event from Watkins Glen on the 21st of September in the Cup layout, so big thumbs up. Then, due to my request, more or less, Belle Isle is back on the 5th of October, sprint and feature, and on the 19th we are going to have another sprint plus feature at Zandvoort. On the 2nd of November, big enduro at Bathurst, crown jewel of the championship, always on the schedule. Don't want to miss that. Road Atlanta
Oh,
on the
that'll be my birthday. Sorry,
Oh
2nd of
wow,
November. So that's my birthday
nice
hasn't been
present.
on a Saturday for about like 10 years or something, and so that's very nice. Thanks, guys. I'm
That's a
sure Clyde meant that.
that's a good present. Road Atlanta will be the penultimate round on the 16th of November, sprint plus feature, and then we will round up the proceedings on the 30th of November. So it's crazy because right now I am, outside is 35 degrees, and the season will end when it's almost time to put up the Christmas tree on the 30th of November from the new Silverstone, and that will be a classic super sprint event, of course, in the national layout. Being a super sprint event, we tend to go to the smaller tracks, which is something I absolutely like. And that is no, the calendar is interesting, Sam, but also big changes ahead, and most of these changes have come after the you know something that happened this season. And it's nice when the championship takes measures, not straight away, but they took their time and they made sensible decisions, I think. And the first of all, of course, is the new reverse grid wheel, which will let us embarrass ourselves, and that was not going to be the only thing that we are going to embarrass ourselves with, because also, after the slightly longer than usual Bathurst round, the races will change. And whilst we will still have super sprint, sprint, feature, and enduros, they will be all timed races. So the super sprint will be 3 50-minute races. Then we are going to have the sprint races, which are going to be 20 minutes. The features are going to be 40, and the enduros will be 1 hour and a half. So there will be no more sadly, late night, checkered flag in battles. But this means that we will embarrass ourselves, I think, at least once, by getting the white flag moment wrong, But that's okay. I mean, I did it on Monday, so experience certainly doesn't help. And also the new sponsor, Racetech, that jumped on board, and they are basically, they build and they design race seats, and not only that, both for real life cars, and now they are also expanding in sim racing, and their banner and their sponsor will be on all the cars. The Racetech Cup will be the new overall championship. The cars will be identified by a black banner, and that will basically replace the KSW Cup. And then the white club championship will be the Racetech Club Championship, and that will replace the basically the yellow cars. Rules will be the same. The team championship will be sponsored by Simability with the top three the top two drivers in each round will score for the team. Safe Driver Award will be sponsored by Button Box and, of course, the Fred Bingham Forever Forward Award. Drop weeks are not going to change. There can only be one drop week, and the final one cannot be dropped. Point scoring remains exactly the same. There is a long list on the on the website, and the protest system that will be put in in effect from next season. That's a first, if I'm not mistaken. And there will be a 12-hour cooling period, so I think it's a very smart decision, by the organ, because usually after the first half an hour of rage, unless it's something egregious, it goes away. At least in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's a good addition. So have you been able to protest previously?
I don't
Like,
think you. I don't
no,
think you
I think
could.
it's been a bit kind of informal,
Yeah.
you tell the admins, have a look at this and see if they need to take any action. But I think that's probably the wise thing to do. I'm currently trying to get an admin system for the BSRTC, which would be quite useful. But good to see them using that system for the year of the eights for next season. And just looking at the schedule, I think probably the rounds that at least stand out to me are probably about, I think, Watkins Glen Cup as well. The fact that wait, is that Super Sprints?
Yes, it is.
Yes, so a fantastic chance for someone new to claim a race victory, I think, at that round at Watkins Glen with the super spins there, because of course the cut plough, it's dare I say, quite simple now. Of course, in the V8 no circuit is simple, and up the hill is going to be quite difficult, but certainly one of the easy tracks. Of course, Bell, certainly one of the most difficult tracks, and also Silverstone,
The new
super
one, yeah.
spin race, and the national circuit. Personally, I really quite like the national circuit, and I've just made a camera pack for it as well, so we'll
So,
be able to show off that when that comes around. But any other rounds that really stand out to you, Marco?
well, Bathurst, Belial, they are going to be classics. I'm very glad that they put Virginia in, because I bought it for the MX5s 1 month ago, and so I will put it to use once again for the second time. So it's not going to be, useless. I still have to get a new Silverstone. So yeah, when I got Virginia, I had all the tracks in iRacing, all the road tracks. But now I'm once again missing one, and I think I have a bit of time to get Silverstone. I don't know if it's in any calendar that I race, but back to the series. Belle Isle, Bathurst, the crown jewel, of course, of the championship. Interlagos is a track that always provides great racing, and I'm going back in my mind. I don't think we've ever commentated the V8s uh, around Bathurst. So sorry, around Interlagos. So that might be a first, and it's certainly going to be very exciting.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
quite a new thing.
uh,
And also, the sorry, were you going to say something,
yeah,
Marco?
that I'm going to be a good sport and not say anything about Sebring.
Sorry, what would you say about? Oh, yes. How could I forget? How could I be? We know our stuff about Sebring, don't we? Undoubtedly. But no, we will be humble about that. But when that round comes along, providing that neither of us have won a race by that time, from now to then,
Well, it's one
undoubtedly,
week, so and I'm
yeah.
not racing in
Oh
the
well, yeah, of
in
course,
the
yeah.
Glen 6 hours, so neither are you apparently. So,
No, I'm
uh,
not. No.
so yeah, that will have to that will be nice to be back in Sebring, and it's a track that I really love to see these cars run around because of the way the bumps. These cars are difficult enough on their own, but on a bumpy track like Sebring, the drivers, good that it's the media day because it will certainly help these drivers get back into the groove, or for the new ones, it will be a nice welcome, to the series and to the car.
Yeah, definitely. Also, just looking at the club championship, because we're getting into the part we're about an hour and 20 into this, I think. And it's coming to the point where we're going to have to start making some predictions because last season, Marco absolutely knocks it on the head with Nicole Foggy claiming his first ever championship victory. Unfortunately, we got the club championship entry because the rules for the club championship is to qualify, a driver needs to have completed a minimum of 50% of the races from the previous season, and also have also never have scored a top 5 finish where the starting grid has been 20 or more cars in the previous 3 seasons.
Okay, so
And
that's why
so,
Gary Croft is still eligible then. So
yes, so I quite like how Croft hasn't got a top 5 finish, but we've got Hoffman, Woodward, Switzer, Whiting, Croft, Frost, Bogotyrev, and Antonia. And Antonio, considering that he missed a few of the rounds last season and finished sixth, I think a couple of times as well, he just about scrapes through. Who are you going to go for, Marco, out of that list?
Clyde Whiting is going to be your club championship champion.
Wow. Oh, bold. Well, myself, I'm going to go for Nikolai Bogotyrev. I think that's the percentage. You know that he's going to turn up for the vast majority of races. I'm putting my trust in you, Nikolai, to continue your good form from last season. But I think lots of drivers. Anthony Woodward, former runner-up. Remember, he was runner-up to Richard Warmingham. He's not a bad driver, so he's certainly going to be thereabouts. Maybe Andrew Hoffman as well. And of course, Whiting, Crofts, and Antonia as well, particularly, could be a big danger. And so we pay our attention to the overall championship, Marco. And after we talked about this second place driver usually wins the following season. Are you going to follow that? Are you going to follow Nicole Foggy again, or are you going to go for something a little bit more out there?
I am, I thought about, the winner of the championship in the past, hour and a half. I would say, in my opinion, that this is going to be the year of the back-to-back for Nicole Foggy.
Right. Okie doke. So back to back. No driver. No, only Tony Klusman has won 2 championships. That was season 1 and season 2. And ever since then, we've had 5 different championship winners. Well, I've got to go for something different. And it's ever so difficult because Foggy is going to be looking very good. But I'm going to go for Johnny Branton then. I think for the championship winner, of course, second place this season. And Michael Docker finished. Oh no, sorry, I don't think Docker did. But Brandon finished second in season 4, won season 5. Foggy finished second in season 5, won season 6. And so I'm putting my trust in Johnny Brandon to take home the championship next time. So it'll be very interesting. And of course, Marco, those two aren't the only drivers who can win. I think Kloosterman and maybe even Warmingham. Stadler, Jackson, if Docker commits, if McClay commits. There's loads of drivers who could rival for the championship.
There are. That's the beauty of this championship because on any given day, anyone can get a race win. So, you know, uh, honestly, I really cannot wait. I like the media day because these drivers, so with no points on the line, will just want to put on a good show and get some confidence boost for the upcoming season. So we just have to wait, 7, 8 days more, and then by this time next week we will be almost at the end of that particular broadcast, and we will know, you know, not we won't have a clear picture, but certainly we will start to get an idea of how the season is going to unfold.
Yes, that will give us an indication perhaps. But yeah, really only in 6 months' time when season 7 of the UOB8 Supercar Series comes to an end. That'll be when we really know who's going to win the championship. Yeah, thanks for everyone who's watched along with this. If you like this type of format, certainly do let us know. Maybe we could expand this to other series, but we've certainly enjoyed it. Of course, Nicole Foggy winning the overall championship, and Guy Croft also winning the AM Championship. So yeah, it was a fantastic season of racing, season 6 of the UOB8 Supercar Series. And of course, as Marco has already alluded to, we'll be back in 1 week's time for the media day at Sebring, 3 weeks' time for round 1 of the championship. And of course, if you're not already parts of the league, certainly do become parts of the league. Just message us maybe on Facebook or join the V8 ESC website, and you
Yes,
can find
championship is
details on
free.
how to join. Yes, and
Championship
it's a
is
free
free.
championship, of course.
So
And you can do, we've got a race every week, of course. We're not broadcasting the super sprint races, but if you just feel as though you want to do 3 20-minute races, that's a format every other week. And that's broadcasted as well, by the way, by ASEA TV, I believe. So,
yes,
if that's your cup of tea, then certainly give that a go. Do give the V8 a go, though, because
it's a
it's
great
such,
idea, I think,
yeah.
because but anticipating the championship, by 1 week, it really gives the drivers a chance to, test the upcoming main series event in a more relaxed, setting, and I think it's going to be a fantastic. And also, I've just read that they are basically starting a driver development program with the likes of Tony
Yes.
Klusterman, Victor Tanaka. So it's certainly, if you are interested in driving the Euro V8s and you live wherever you live in the world, but especially in Europe and North America, do join this championship. It's free and you get to be broadcast on TV. So what more can you want?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, will be an awesome next season. Yeah, the community in this championship is absolutely fantastic. You'll have to go very far, I imagine, in order to find a better community of jazz. So helpful in terms of showing you how to get started, and certainly hope that you will be interested. But of course, I realise the vast majority of listeners will be drivers from the series, and thanks to you guys for putting on this fantastic championship, and thanks to the admins as well, particularly Clyde White, who organises the majority of the series. And me and Marco are certainly looking forward to next season, and certainly Apex Racing TV to thank them for letting us broadcast the awesome championship. So I think for now, from me and from Marco, we'll see you in 1 week's time for the media day of the Year V8 Supercar Series.